Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Hingham School Committee meeting of December 16th. I am calling to order. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and televised by Harbor Media. Is there anyone else in the audience who is intending to video or audio the meeting? No? All right, great, thank you. Item number 2 on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve, a meeting on December 2nd and a workshop held on December 2nd. Somebody want to make a, Carlos?
I'll make a motion that we move to approve the minutes of the school committee meeting held on December 2nd, 2019.
A second? Liza, thank you. Any discussion or questions, comments? Yep.
One thing, I think it says that we adjourned not to return to open meeting, but we did return to open meeting to our workshop.
So I think we adjourned and then we reopened. Yes, so we
Okay.
adjourned and then we did a call to order for the workshop. So
Got
it
it.
was really
Okay.
technically 2, and we posted them as separate
Separate
meetings as well.
Okay, got
Yes. Thank you. Anything else? No? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? No? Great. And
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the school committee workshop held on December 2nd, 2019.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I would just like to compliment Kellie that I thought the notes were very well done, considering it was a discussion all over the place, so thank you for capturing the key points.
I know. No, they were very good. Thank you. Any discussion, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, great. Thank you. Item number 3, questions and comments. The Hingham School Committee encourages community engagement, and we welcome questions and comments as agenda items are discussed at the meeting. But if anyone is here tonight for anything not on the agenda, seeing none, then I will just move on to item number 4, Superintendent's report. Dr.
Thank you
Frost.
very much, and good evening, everyone. What's not on the agenda is if we're having school tomorrow or not. I don't know. We'll see when that happens, I think. All right, well, good morning, good evening. For the first thing, just the MSBA on here, just so that if anyone is not aware, the MSBA did vote last Wednesday affirmatively to authorized the MSBA to offer eligibility period to the town of Hingham. Many of us were here that day. It was a great day, and that was a very affirmative vote for us, and lots of work ahead. So exciting time for us here as we look at the Foster School for the next several years. The second thing on here I have is the Environmental Incorporated Louders Environmental Corporation donation of $75. Just want to let you know that we received a check in the amount of $75 from Louders Environmental as a way to what they call give back to the community, since they do some work for us. This money has been placed in a high school fields account, as it has been in previous years. This is something we do every year, and we thank them for that. Winter coaching assignments, they're in your packet. They are attached to that, and then it's the names of all the coaches of our winter sports. I'll not read the names, but they're in there for your review if you want to see them. And thank all the coaches and the time for people giving to our winter sports and another big season. The December 1 enrollment. Current enrollment of Hingham Public Schools is 4,315. That's for all those that we're responsible for. This is comparable actually to the number of students the district had at the end of the year in June 2019, with just 3 more students of 4,318. We always have a tendency to go up towards the end, particularly after the holiday here in December. So we will come back again in the winter and give you another update on that. Had a board meeting at the SSEC, the South Shore Education Collaborative, recently. You will note that I wanted you to note that there is a full copy, if anybody wants to see, of the SSEC annual report in my office for your review. It is quite long, so I did not copy that for everyone, but there is a copy if you want to see the full report. The SSEC financial reports indicate the financial projections for FY20 indicates there will be a positive financial balance at the close of the school year, so that's obviously very positive. In our recent meeting, the SSEC annual report was reviewed and approved. The independent audit report was reviewed and approved, And the SSEC Board approved the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District to be included as a member district of the SSEC. So we'll be adding Whitman-Hanson, and that'll begin on July 1, 2020. So that's it for my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Dr. Austin on communications? Reports? No? All right. Or actually, sorry. And then communications. Do you have
Communications. Just to move forward, we received notice that the Massachusetts School Building Authority has voted unanimously to extend an invitation to the town of Hingham into its eligibility period beginning on April 1. So that's when the actual work, we would have everyone in motion. That's when we actually start our time clock, April 1, 2020. The eligibility period will extend 270 days through December 28, 2020. We must complete all requirements prior to any vote. So there are 7 or 8 things, and so there's a copy of the letter we received from the MSBA, and it has multiple items that we must complete in that 270-day period. And you must complete those before we go into a vote of the MSBA for feasibility study. So we'll be working, that'll be the main work that must be done in the next few months. We'll discuss the invitation with the MSBA in more detail on Wednesday night, December 18th at 6 p.m. here, which will be a joint meeting of all they've confirmed they're all coming at the same time. We'll have the school building committee and I believe advisory committee, and others will be there.
And Tom Mayo, yes.
And select board, yep.
Yep.
So we'll do that on Wednesday night. So that's the communications I have.
And that meeting will not be televised.
Yep, that meeting it's an open public meeting, it's posted, so anyone from the community is welcome to attend. It's just not going to be televised because it's more of a workshop type format.
Michelle, are we going to have that in here, or is that going to be in one of the other rooms because of the size?
I think we had it planned for, posted for here. Or Central North, I'm sorry,
Central
thank you,
North,
Pam,
okay.
that is right. Pam
Good.
King, always thinking ahead for us, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, Central North,
Thank you.
thank you. Student communications, Emma, thanks for being here tonight.
I just wanted to start off by saying thank you to Dr. Austin for calling a snow day after the last meeting.
You're welcome.
The Hingham High School's math team remains undefeated with a 10-0 record. Miss Haller and Miss Stanley won recognition for the 2019 Hingham High School yearbook. They won Best Use of Theme Graphics Award from Heroff Jones. On top of that, Ms. Haller was recognized by the Massachusetts Secondary Schools Athletic Directors Association as Administrative Assistant of the Year. At the beginning of the month, Ms. Pollard and Mr. Hoy hosted the Andrew Warhofta Catching Kindness Awards. The Kindness Club collected thousands of toiletries for donation to the My Sisters and Brothers Keepers. This is another example of HHS helping the community around us. As a crowd favorite, the Mentor Club had their annual gingerbread house making, forming bonds with other grades and making connections. Thanks to the PTO funding, all the freshmen were able to visit a museum in room 103 by the retired Latin teacher Doug Ryan. Rian Peacock moves on to the state competition for the American Legion Voice of Democracy essay and scholarship contest. And lastly, the winter sports are starting up with a win for the girls and boys basketball team. And Kelsey Tarby, a freshman, was 2 seconds away from creating the school record in the 300 at their track meet.
And Emma did sign her letter of intent to attend Connecticut College of, what is it, Camus?
Yeah.
And play soccer for them, so congratulations to you.
Does anyone else have any other communications to share? No? All right. Then moving on to new business. Item 6.1, to receive the class of 2019 College Board Testing and Placement Report from Head of Counseling, Heather Rodriguez. Thank you for being here tonight. Hello.
Looking good.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Good
Evening.
Thank you for inviting me again this year. So the College Entrance Examination Board is what CEB, that's the biggest question I always get at this presentation, is what that stands for, Testing and Placement Report. So it's a profile of the graduating class of 2019, although the College Board has now significantly changed the way that they report data. So it's actually become more of a snapshot of the 2019 testing year, so not always necessarily a profile of the graduating class for some of the testing data. So I'll mention that as I go through the report, just to pull out what is specific to the graduating class and what's specific to the testing year, so you know that. So again, it's just a snapshot of testing. That is not by any means how we define the quality of the students in the graduating class, but it is an important benchmark that we look to in terms of testing. So right here you see the summary of plans of the graduating class. So pretty consistently, we have about 91% of our students going on to four-year schools, which is a pretty high percentage comparatively. Close to 3 going to junior, so two-year colleges or another specialized training program, and then 1.1% going on to prep school. So in all, about 95% of our students are continuing their education immediately after high school. We have about 3% going directly into the workforce. Many of those students do go back to further their education a little bit later, but this is immediate plans upon graduation. And then we had the gap year and military service. That represents 1 student in each of those categories. That's why it's a 0.4%. So, and then we had 1.5% of the class that was truly undecided, didn't have a job specifically lined up, didn't have a plan for a gap year. Most of them are planning to take a few classes and take some time to figure out exactly what they want to do, but they didn't have a specific plan. So they kind of land in that undecided category. So those are the plans of the graduating class. Next, we cover the SAT. So this slide just kind of gives you a big overview of what the SAT is all about. The College Board changed it most recently in the 2017 testing year. They got rid of the 3rd permanent writing section, and they now have gone to an optional essay. Most schools don't require it, but a lot of schools do want a student to take it once, and some of them don't use it in admissions. They just use that for maybe placement once the student gets to the college. So most of our students will take the optional essay at least one of their times that they sit for the exam, but the vast majority of them do not take it multiple times and continue to improve their score because it's not a giant factor in the admissions process. So right now the 2 biggest sections are the evidence-based reading and writing and the mathematics. Each are scored on a 200 to 800 basis, and so the total score is out of 1,600. So one thing to note, and that's just a little bit more about how many questions are in each section. One thing to notice, go right ahead. Absolutely. A lot more information about the SAT up there. Go right ahead. So one thing to notice, yep.
Keep going, okay.
Sure. Is our mean score comparison. So what they've now done is they give us all the tests in a given testing year as opposed to the graduating class of 2019. So these mean scores reflect the tests in the 2017-2018 school year, because most students take the SAT when they're juniors. So it's not the year that they graduate. Some of them will take it for a 2nd or 3rd time in the fall of the year that they're going to graduate, but most of the time it's in their junior year. So these are the means reported Hingham, Massachusetts, and nationwide from the testing year that 2019 graduates were juniors. So might there be a couple kids who take it when they're a sophomore thrown in there? Yes, there might be. But that's unusual. We've had 1 or 2 in the past, but it's not going to significantly impact the data at all. So I just want to let you know that. So if you look, Hingham is pretty well above the state and the nation in all 3 categories, and we're pretty consistent from year to year. The next slide shows us subject tests. So the great part about the College Board this year and last year with data is they are saying that they're no longer providing mean data for individual states or the whole nation group as a whole. And I don't know why that is. And they don't give me any information other than it's not available and they're working on their reporting. So what we see here is actually you have to make a data request to the College Board. They used to give us a nice summary report for the graduating class. Because they've changed the way they report, they don't do that anymore. So we have to make a data request to them specifically, and I asked specifically for the cohort group of the graduating class of 2019. So this is not a school year test. This is anyone at any point during their high school career from the class of 2019 that took a subject test reflects those means. So we're bouncing back and forth in terms of what kind of data we're reporting, but that's what we can get from the College Board at this point. So you can see the comparison for 2 years at this point because that's what they've offered us. For those of you who have been on the committee in previous years, we used to do a bunch of different graphs for each subject test, and we just don't have that data anymore. Because the nice thing about those was it would compare Hingham's mean to the state and the nation on a 3-year basis, but we don't have that information for the past 2 years. So now we're just kind of doing a summary. Our numbers in terms of taking tests has been pretty steady. You see there's a couple tests this year, the French and the Spanish, that don't have the number of test takers, and the world history, that don't have the number of test takers to report a significant mean, so the College Board doesn't even give us that data. So I don't know what those mean scores are. So that is a subject test. A note on the subject tests, they are 1 hour in length tests on a specific subject. And so there are about 20 of them that the College Board offers. These are the ones that Hingham High School students take. They are required by only 3 colleges in the entire country. They are recommended by 13 colleges in the country. And then there are another 13 that recommend them for some specific programs that a college may offer, so engineering or architecture or something like that. So they are not as broadly taken by students in high school any longer. They used to be a normal part of what everybody did, but now that the ACT has risen in popularity and the subject test has kind of gone down a little bit because also so many schools are going test optional that kids just aren't testing as much, and colleges are first even deciding whether they think the SAT itself is a valid measure that's reliable to predict college level success. So I think because of all of that, the subject tests have become less important. So we just don't see the amount of emphasis that colleges are putting in the admissions cycle for the subject tests. So the next big entrance exam is the ACT. The difference between the SAT and the ACT, every college in the country wants, if they're not test optional, wants either one of them. They don't care whether it's an SAT or an ACT. They will accept either. So we work with students who are interested in taking either both, or if they want to just focus on one because they feel that that's their strength. It really doesn't matter which one they take. Whichever one they think is going to reflect them the best is what we encourage them to stick with. So the ACT is a more straightforward type of test. The SAT is based on a reasoning model, so very often it will be a lot of information in the question that students need to figure out, what are you asking me, what's the relevant information, and then what's the answer. The ACT is actually more akin to an SAT subject test where it's a little more precise and a little more straightforward. So some students are a little more comfortable with that. They're not putting in extra information and asking you to reason through it. They're just saying, do you have the answer to this question, and present it pretty directly. So some students do feel that that is a better model for them. What we do at the high school is we offer in the sophomore year a pre-ACT, which is just a practice. Students get scores, but they're not reported anywhere, just to the student and the counselor. They never get seen by a college. And then in the junior year, we offer the the PSAT, which is a pre-SAT. Same thing, practice, doesn't go anywhere. And that way, if students take both, They can compare how they did on each one, see which one they felt more comfortable with, and then they can work with their family and their counselor to see, should I take both for real? Should I just stick with one? Which one do I feel better at? The ACT lends itself less to test prep like the SAT does, just because it is more straightforward. So doing well in school and paying attention and doing your curriculum on a daily basis is very valuable prep for the ACT. So you don't kind of see that test prep industry as much built up with the ACT as you do with the SAT. It's a different type of test. It's scored from 1 to 36, where the SAT is 200 to 800. There are concordance tables that all of us have as counselors, so we can kind of say, okay, if you were here on the ACT, that means you're here on the SAT. Are you pretty much the same, or was one significantly different? The vast majority of students will score about the same on each of them, but there is a small cohort of students that we find does prefer one over the other, and there will be a difference. Go ahead. So that is the mean score presentation for Hingham students, and they do generously give us the Massachusetts and national means, so we do have comparison. We're over and above what the state and the nation do in every category, and you can see that our means have gone up every year, and it's becoming more popular. I think you'll see that the past 2 years there were a jump in the number of students who were taking it. Last year's class was about 30 kids fewer than the previous graduating class, so I think that's why we saw the number dip, not because fewer kids are taking it, just because it was a smaller class. Go right ahead. Thank you. So now transitioning to the AP score summary. The College Board has also changed a little bit about how they present AP scores. It's much more robust in some ways, but then some of the data is a little harder to find. So if we look at a 5-year score summary, we can see the total number of students who take the test were pretty consistent and going up every year. And even though we had about 30 fewer students in the graduating class, we had only 10 fewer or 11 fewer kids take AP exams. So we're close to 500 exams. We got above 500 for 1 year, and then we've gone back down a little bit. But you do see, so the AP scores are 1 to 5 scoring system. A 3 is considered proficient, and then a 4 and a 5 is well qualified and highly qualified. So depending on the college, a 3 is usually the minimum score that they will require if they want to consider granting credit for an AP course, because it is a college level course taken in high school. So each school sets their parameters for what score they will award credit for once the student gets to their institution, but a 3 is the benchmark of what we look for. So you'll see a lot of data presented of percentage of 3 or higher, and that's why we choose the 3. So we have 94.5% of our students getting a 3 or higher on the exams. Yeah.
The total number of AP students, that's sophomores, juniors, and seniors combined?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And in the report, you'll see a couple of the pages. It differentiated number of seniors and number of exams taken by seniors versus other students. So I think I have that in a slide coming up.
I saw that first, and I was like, wait, how?
Right.
There
Why is it
were
different?
280 kids in the class. How can there be 250?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the mean grade comparison, you'll notice the holes. Those are because there are fewer than 10 students taking those courses. And so we can't report a reliable mean when there's that few students. A few of them had only 1 student, and if we put their score up there, then you would know, if you happen to know the student who took that exam, you'd know their exam, so we can't publicize that. But we do have that data. That is something, whereas the subject tests don't share that with us. The AP, I do get that data, so I know that. Chemistry was a course offered by Hingham High School. We just had, I think, 7 students take that exam, so that's why a mean's not reported. Chinese, we had students who we didn't have a number of FTEs to support a whole class being taught by a teacher to do the Chinese class last year. So what we did is we had 4 students who did independent study with Miss Pollard, one of our guests here in the audience. So they prepared independently with her guidance and then took the exam. So that was in school, not a traditional class, but not online preparation. Computer Science A, we had a couple of students who did a virtual high school class to prepare for that exam. Human Geography and Italian Language, same thing. They were not virtual high school classes, but classes that a student took online independently and prepared for the exam. Latin, we offered at our school. We had a small enough cohort that we can't report a mean. And then Research and Seminar are new classes. They're part of the AP Capstone program. They're unique classes where they're project-based and research learning, and it's a 2-class sequence. So students start with seminar and then they go on to the research class if they choose to. And if students successfully complete those 2 classes as well as a number of other AP courses, they can earn an AP Capstone diploma, which is just a nice designation for them to earn. We had 4 students enrolled in those classes, and so we can't report a mean, but those are classes taken at Hingham High School. And then same thing with Studio Art 3D, too few students to report a mean, but a class offered at our school. And then a student did U.S. government and politics through our virtual high school program. Thank you. Then we always like to see how we're doing in comparison to our benchmark schools. So this chart tells us how we did in comparison to those schools. Out of the benchmark schools, we had the highest score average, percent of scores 3 or better. Out of all of our benchmark schools, we were 9th in the state with percentage of grades 3 or better. And so you can see the state totals down in the last row. That's just the total number of tests taken in the state of Massachusetts and the total number of scores that were earned on the exams. There is a discrepancy. They have us having, so this information is taken from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education website, and somehow they have us having 467 exams where the College Board tells us that we had 472 and I have 472. So I'm not sure if somehow the state's data, they didn't match the student with the school or what happened, but there's 5 exams hanging out there that the state doesn't think we have that the College Board assigns to us, and that's what I had from my data. So just thought that was interesting for anyone who kind of pulled that out of the report and noticed that they were different numbers. Go ahead, thank you. So AP Scholars is a designation that the Advanced Placement Program gives for students who take multiple exams and score highly on those multiple exams. So in your packets, there's an explanation of each different level of scholar. So if we move to the right of the chart, the students have to do more and score higher to progress through the right of the chart. So the AP Scholar Award is the entry-level scholar award. We had 29 students earn that, 29 get a scholar with honor, 34 scholar with distinction, 3 national scholar. International diploma is something that students have to apply for separately through the AP program, and then seminar and research certificate is brand new. That's part of the AP Capstone program. So we had the 4 students that did those classes earned that designation. And then our last slide is national merit finalists and semifinalists and commended students. So each year, the PSAT, taken by juniors, students can qualify, and if they reach a certain performance level, they can be recognized through this program. Typically, it's the top 2% of testers. Every year we've had, well, not every year, but most years we have 1 or 2 semifinalists, and we have a number of commended students, so we've continued that tradition with the graduating class of 2019. One note that I didn't note back when we were going through the actual data. I know that we've had a lot of discussion in previous years. I've been able to get data from the College Board, ACT, and the AP program about special education students or students with disabilities and what their testing performance is, and we can pull that out separately. The College Board no longer provides that, nor does the ACT. The AP doesn't provide it, but because we are a test, like it's held at our school, I can go back and I can look at our master roster and I can compare to X2 and I can go name by name and I can figure out who those students are. So I'm in the middle of completing that for last year. I do know that last year we had a record number of students with disabilities sitting for exams. So I know it's higher than it has been in past years, and I know that was going to be a data point that people were going to want. So I will email that out to the committee and Dr. Austin when I have that completed. It's just a little bit more of a time-sensitive process trying to go student by student. So that's why we don't have that for this evening. But I did want to give the information that it's mostly 504 students as it has been in the past. It's not equal IEP in 504, but I believe there was at least one student on an IEP. What I've also tried to do, which I think would be an interesting data endeavor, was try and look at students who had ever been on an IEP, because by the time students are juniors or seniors, they may have been on an IEP at one point, but they don't get accommodations necessarily unless they are currently on the exam or on having accommodations when they're taking the exam. So they wouldn't be, I think there are some students who have kind of moved off of an IEP who have taken those exams, but then they don't get flagged like that when the state does their information. So that's all potential data projects that I want to look into. That I won't have as quickly as I will have the number of AP exams last year for students. So.
Before you move from this,
Yeah.
let me ask you, there was a lot of concerns the way we reported GPA that some students were not getting merit money. Have you seen, I mean, based on that, I think we changed in 2017, right? And I see that the commendations actually increased there. Have you seen any impact of changing the way we report GPA in terms of students getting merit money?
Well, that's completely different than merit money awarded by colleges. And part of the problem is, so no, we haven't seen any change in the number or percentage of students being accepted with a new GPA. So that we have not seen. That's been fairly steady since we've changed the GPA. Merit money is very tricky, and this is something that we've tried to gather information. We just can't get it because colleges generally don't share with us the number of students that they give merit money to. We ask in a survey at the end of the year for students to self-report, were you given merit money for this school? But very often they don't share that information with us, so we have no real basis of knowing who actually got merit money from all the colleges that they were offered acceptance to. Very often it's different because they'll say, well, that was a safety school, so I don't remember, I didn't pay attention because I didn't want to go there. The school that I'm going to didn't, but you know, so it's something that's really hard. We've been trying to figure out how to gather that data, but when colleges don't release it to us, and if we don't have, we have some data from families, but not consistent data for every college, for every student, so there's really no way to kind of figure out what exactly is going on there. So most of it is just anecdotal. Whenever I have a student of mine tell me, in Naviance you can check off a box that says scholarship and I'll make a little note, but that's just if a student happens to tell me, right? So it's not really reliable and comprehensive data that we have. So that's the formal end to the report. Any other questions?
Yeah, actually I have another one, if
Yeah.
you don't mind.
Yeah, no.
So I see here that the number of students accepted to certain universities, and,
Yes.
and then, I mean, I see a lot of application to certain schools where the denial number has been 100%.
Yes.
Has there been any follow-up with those schools to see why they are denying our students acceptance?
There has been in some cases. Again, colleges don't really share that data if it's not the student calling. Very often, if we have a student, for instance, we make the most phone calls like that when we have a student who might have applied early decision or early action, and we encourage students to call on their own because often they'll say, I can't share anything, even though you're the counselor. But if we do call, they'll say, we get the generic, it was a very competitive year, We look to craft a class that has a diverse interest and diverse talent base. And so sometimes we'll get a counselor who will say, well, to be frank, we could tell it wasn't their first choice. We found some errors, or, you know, we didn't admit anyone in the early pool that had a C on their transcript, or, you know, so we'll get bits and pieces of information, but generally they just give us a general, it's a competitive year and we have more applicants who are qualified than spots available. So that's
Would
tough
be
data to get as
would
well.
be illegal for us to sort of like identify the schools that are denying our students, and then sort of like ask on a volunteer basis the students applying to the schools if for you'll be encouraged to let us know the status, whether you've been accepted or not, and so we can sort of like learn from the experience and try to. I mean, I'm not sure. It's just the numbers that I keep seeing I keep repeating, of the schools not accepting our students.
Yeah, and there have been
wondering
schools
why.
that we've specifically worked with because we notice a pattern and we've said, can you give us any information? And sometimes they will, but they don't, because admissions is not scientific, it's kind of an art with a process, they don't let us know kind of the behind the scenes secrets of what they're doing. Most of the time we have gotten, your students are very qualified, it's the number of applications. It's also been different once the Common App hit popularity. Students are submitting applications because they can with the click of a button pretty easily. They can fill out one application and then submit to a bunch of schools. I don't have the exact numbers with me, but an interesting case is Boston College used to do early action. So it was a non-binding program. You could apply early and you could hear early, but you didn't need to commit until May 1st. This year, for the first time, they went to an early decision 1 and early decision 2, which means it's a binding agreement. They had an earlier in the year deadline, and then they have a second deadline as well. We got an email, and I'll have to look at it for you, but they had, I want to say, don't completely quote me on this, it's just kind of a general number, but they went from like 16,000 early action applications to 1,600 early decision. When the level of commitment increases, when you can't just push a button and say, yeah, I'd like to hear from them early, the level goes down. So I think that speaks a lot to what kids are doing. We used to have them apply when I first started about 20 years ago to 4 to 6 schools, and now it's more like 10 to 12. So when everyone's applying to that number of schools, everybody feels like they have to because everybody's submitting that many applications. So until everybody stops at the same time, you're not going to see a reduction, because then you feel like, well, if they're applying, then I'm going to be disadvantaged if I only apply to 3. So I think that's a little bit
Okay.
of what's happening.
That's
But
part
if
of
there's
it.
specific schools you want us to reach out to,
Sure.
we can certainly do that
All
and
right.
see what we get.
Thank you.
Can't do anything but try, right? What else?
I was looking at the number of students that take the AP exams in Hingham, and it seems relatively low compared to our benchmark towns. I was just looking at like Norwell's 486, Situate's 545, Westwood
Yeah.
726. Do you have any sense of why that is?
It could be, just trying to get to that page in the report. It could be some schools, and I don't know the exact policies at other schools, but some schools may have open enrollment in all of their AP courses, so it just depends on the philosophy of the school. Some will say there's no prerequisite for any class. If you want to sign up for it, you sign up for it, you get to take it. We are one of the fewer schools that require students to take the exam if they take the course. So that, but that still would be reflected in the number of tests that they take. So yeah, I don't know exactly what the difference is. We do have a few open enrollment where there are no prerequisites. Most of them you're recommended. Students can still override into them, but you're kind of recommended. If you don't have the prerequisite courses, then students feel like they might not be successful. But I know this year our AP chemistry teacher really encouraged some of her level 3 students, so that's the college prep level. So that would be college prep, level 2 is honors, and then level 1 is AP. She really went out of her way to ask see promise in the level 3 students, and for the first time we have a smaller cohort of students who have never been in an honors class, much less an AP, and she encouraged them to take AP chemistry. So we have some teachers who are kind of actively seeking that out. So we'll see how it goes on, how their performances are on the exams this year. But I know the philosophy of the College Board is just exposure to that type of curriculum breeds access to that level of thinking, the analytical thinking, just a different way of approaching a class in high school, and even whether you're successful in terms of getting a 3 or higher on the exam or not, that helps students just with their critical thinking skills.
Definitely, it seems like it would be good preparation for college.
Right.
So. My other question is there any way to track how students do once they attend college? How many transfer or don't or drop out, or or is anything like take time off, anything like that?
Yeah, we do have Naviance is the software that we use that kind of does the application process. It used to be called the Clearinghouse, but now it's they have an analytics student tracking, so they can give us reports. They're general broad pie chart reports, and there's a lot of missing data in there, so the data looks pretty skewed, so they're not that accurate, but we can see where individual students have ended up because they get assigned, much like when they enroll in a public school in Massachusetts, they get a state identifier number that no matter where they move, that moves with them. Most colleges, not all, do that as well, and so we can track where they are. So I can look at particular students and kind of see, did they complete the semester, did they take a break? But the global reports, a lot of institutions aren't part of that, and so there just seems to be odd data whenever we look at those reports, that there's something missing because it's not, like we couldn't have percentages that big of students who completed college in 3 years, which is always like a big percentage, so.
Right.
But yes, we can
Okay.
somewhat track that.
Okay, great. And I just want to thank you for digging into students with IEPs and 504s who take that. I think that's important information, so
Yes,
thanks for taking the
absolutely.
time to do
Yeah,
that. So.
thank you.
I guess similar to what Kerry was asking, I was going to ask if you were communicating on the AP scores to the benchmark communities of what their requirements were
I
to
can.
allow students, because while we score very high, do we want to expose more people to the test, and we give up some of the score, but we have great teachers, and
Right.
so students could surprise a
Yep.
lot of people if they had the opportunity. But it would be interesting to then, if we had some comparison to the other communities, it would be a good way of explaining to people why we might be changing philosophy of that. And then I also had a note on graduation levels, or continuous ed. I've seen some places where the state is now looking to measure the outcomes from high schools of success in college. And I was wondering, where the state was getting that data from, because there was a report recently that they listed every community and what their college graduation rates were. And I know you've said in the past that it's almost self-reporting of where our students are even going to college, let alone
For Naviance, yeah.
whether they're going to graduate and
Right,
when
or
the real
transferring.
the real measurements of college graduations is really on a 6-year rate, not a 4-year rate. It's so complicated of where people go afterwards. So I was curious if you knew where the state was even getting that
I
data
didn't
from.
even know they were doing that,
Oh, okay.
so I can look into it.
Yeah, because I was surprised too, because I remember from your reports that, and I also appreciate that your role is the students within the high school until they graduate from
Yes.
high school, and that afterwards, it's really not our responsibility anymore.
Plenty to do while they're with us.
Yes, we wish them well, and we encourage them to do well, but, and we encourage them to come back, but, there's only so much we can do, too, so.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can look into that if I can reach out to some of my colleagues too, or even the DESE themselves to see
Yeah.
where they're getting that.
But it
data.
looks, we're pretty consistent, so.
We are, yep. Yeah, no wild
History students had a
fluctuations.
good year, though.
They did, yeah, yes. Great.
Any
Anything
other
else?
questions? No, right?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heather. Really
Sure.
appreciate that. Very informative. Thank you. All right. Item 6.2, to hear a proposal for a foreign exchange program between Hingham High School and France.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Alec Porter. I'm a high school teacher, I'm a French teacher at the high school, and I am here to propose for your consideration the establishment of an exchange program with a high school in France. It would start in the 2021 academic year, whereby students from France would come and stay with Hingham families. In all likelihood, would be mid to late October of 2020. And then the Hingham students would have an opportunity to go to France and stay with ideally with those students they hosted over April vacation of 2021. I have done many exchanges where I used to teach. We had an exchange program with a high school in Normandy, and it was a rousing success. I've traveled myself. I lived in France for a number of years, but I also have chaperoned a great many trips to France, and I can tell you, I think it goes without saying that kind of experience is very invaluable. One of the benefits, of course, with a homestay as opposed to staying in a hotel is it allows the students to get a real taste of what France is like. Staying with a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old, someone of their age, they might have the same experiences in high school. They also would allow the students to see what family life is like in France, as well as being able to visit the high school itself. And of course, the French high school students would have a similar experience coming here, visiting Hingham, going to the high school, shadowing their host student. And as I said, I had an experience. We have a very well-established program where I used to teach, and it was absolutely marvelous. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience for both sides. So this is something that it's been percolating for some time now. And I haven't really had the opportunity. I've had a lot of difficulty trying to get the program off the ground. But as it so happened, the company Promotour, which is the company we work with to organize our Quebec trip with the middle school students, and Madame Zaid, another French teacher, and I took 15 students to Montreal a couple of years ago, again through Promotour. It was chatting with their travel consultant that I found out that indeed Promotour offers exchange programs. So this was not a problem for them, and they have lots of experience, and they've dealt with many high schools throughout France, as well as and Spain, interesting, but I'm just focusing on France, as well as schools in the East Coast in Massachusetts specifically. So I'm here. I believe I sent you some information. I hope you had a chance to look it over, and I'm here to answer any questions or address any concerns to the best of my ability. And if there is anything I cannot answer, I will be sure to contact Anaïs, our travel consultant, and get back to you promptly. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Questions, comments, thoughts, discussions?
I think it's a great idea. I think that since the Tenoji experience, we hosted a student during that
Right.
experience. When I was a kid, we had similar exchange programs. So I think it's a great idea. It's also a lower cost than
Yes.
many of these other trips that have been offered, which I think is wonderful for possibly allowing, bless you, more people to participate from that standpoint. So I think it's a great experience, and since I think and also the high school community is used to the Tenoji students.
Sure.
That's recent memory.
Right.
so
Right,
that,
right.
to have a new group,
Yeah.
or an additional group, if that one ever comes back again.
Right, and
That
that
would
would
be
be
great.
my hope personally, is to be able to offer this program every other year with the same high school. The high school that we have, so we filled out a profile and I sent it to Pomatul. I described Hingham to the best of my ability and the students and where we are geographically in the United States. And Anais paired us up with a similar high school. This high school is located in Valenciennes, which is about midway between Paris and Brussels. So it's right on the French-Belgian border, probably about 3 hours by train from Paris, northeast, and about equidistant southwest of Brussels. And the idea being is that, again, we would offer this program every other year and establish a rapport with this high school so that it would be the same high school over, again and again and again, subject, of course, to availability. And also that we would, at least initially, I think the target student for us would be juniors and seniors. Language acquisition is, of course, very important, and you'll be speaking French. If you're staying with a French family, you're going to be speaking French, and they might not be able to speak English, so you really have to rely on your language skills. That would be, again, that would be the reason why we would target more of the juniors and seniors, as well as keeping it ideally to maybe 15 students initially, because this is a kind of a starting the program off. We would want to make sure to kind of keep it small and contained,
Yeah.
so it doesn't get too out of control.
And
So.
another question, that the list of Massachusetts schools is very impressive, local and other high-performing schools. Have you been in touch with them? Have they been doing these programs recently?
Some of them have. Some of them actually have been working with Pomatul for a number of years.
Okay.
Interestingly, the school in Valenciennes, I actually have been exchanging emails with the lead teacher who would actually be leading his group, bringing the group to the Hingham, and he just got back from Hampshire Regional School. So this is something that he wants to do every year. I have already made it clear that, subject to approval, of course, that this would be only an every other year thing, because I want to make sure that we have enough students. If you keep sort of tapping the well, eventually the well might run dry, and that would be a shame. So that's really, again, why we're thinking every other year. But he was, as I said, stayed with Hampshire Regional High School late November, early December of this year, and Hampshire will then be traveling in April of 2020. So, yes, to answer your question, this is a number of schools have had working rapport, working relationship with Pomatul, and have had exchanges for a number of years.
Okay.
I just want to say, Alex, that this is great. I mean, a couple of years ago, I spoke with Erica when she was doing one of her presentations here, and I asked about an exchange program, and we didn't have any.
Right.
So it is awesome that you're bringing this up. I'm very supportive. The friendship and the relationship that the students will build with the students will last for many years. And they'll be able to practice, and
right.
exchange emails and so on and so forth. So, you have my support on that.
Thank you.
I think it's great too. I think it could really benefit both for everyone, really. I guess my question is, so I love the idea of a homestay. I think 'cause that's so different than staying in a hotel and like in a touristy area or whatever. But how are the families vetted to make sure that our kids are safe when they're staying in their houses?
Of course. So the Pomatul is the one that they do all of the vetting. They've vetted the high schools. They've vetted the families. How exactly, to be honest, I'm not quite sure. I can absolutely, Pomatul, they're a very well-established organization. I can certainly contact Anais and have her get back to me, and any information I can forward to you. But this is not a question of, it's going through an organization as opposed to me just sort of, picking up the phone and calling high school.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
But absolutely, no, I completely understand. I mean, it's much different staying with a family than it is staying in a hotel.
Right,
so.
which is a great thing.
Of course, yeah.
And then my other question is really more for the committee. I was taking a look at our exchange policy, and it's pretty sparse. I think about as far as who approves the programs and just going forward. I think, I mean, I would definitely support this one, but I was wondering if maybe we should take a look at the policy and kind of beef it up in anticipation for this, and then just going forward, if people were thinking.
Yeah, I actually looked at the Mass website to see if I didn't even look at our own. I didn't think we even had one. Sorry. But, or I didn't recall there being much to it, but it wasn't very in-depth either on the Mask one, so I think we can do a little research and see what other districts have.
I
and
started
make
looking at
sure,
some different towns, and
I would
some of them are
agree
very
to-
specific,
yeah.
you know, about that, and just put something in place,
I-
structure in place,
yes.
and policy and
Yeah, you would think,
procedures.
like, needs to be a recognized firm that you're
Yeah.
working with, and what the criteria are for the vetting and
Yeah,
whatnot.
some have a number of students, so all sorts of
Mhm.
things that we
Yeah.
can talk about, so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if it's all right with everyone, we could take it up in policy to start looking at it.
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
That'd be great.
Thank you. Libby?
So, my only question is, why not Spain? Let's do both.
You'll need to ask a Spanish teacher, right? Because you're representing France.
And I'll just add that I think that it's probably best for us to start with one step. But I know that there are schools in the area that do like an alternating year, like they might do France one year and Spain another year. And, you know, if a program to France is successful, I think that we would probably have interest from a Spanish teacher to do a Spain trip as well.
That would be
But
great.
let's start with one.
Okay. I'll let
No, and
Mr.
I-
Porter
I'm
take
sorry.
they'll let you take the step
Absolutely, we'll
first.
find out if it works.
And they'll follow, right.
Candidate because he's done it before.
Yes, right.
And I will say that is true. I mean, when I first came to Hingham back in whatever it was, essentially there were only two trips. There was a trip to France, which took place on the off year from the trip to a Spanish-speaking country. And in the time that I've been here, almost 15 years, the number of trips we offer in this district has just exploded, which is wonderful. I mean, it's a good problem to have. But I find that it's been challenging at times to round up enough students. You know, sorry, I can't go to France, monsieur, because I'm going to China next year, or vice versa. So again, this year, for example, to your point about cost, and this is another benefit to the homestay, is, as it so happens, Mrs. Shaw, who is a Spanish teacher at the high school, Mrs. Shaw and I are organizing a trip to France and Spain in April of 2020, and it's an 8-day trip, and I think the final cost will be approximately $3,400, and we're taking approximately 30 students. A 10-day trip with this Valenciennes as the destination, a 10-day trip would be with, let's say, 12 to 14 students would be $2,700, and if we were to round up 15 to 19 students, we'd be looking at $2,600. So about $1,800 to $1,000 less staying with families. So again, I completely understand cost management. That is a concern, and the lower the cost, the more people can participate.
Mm-hmm.
So that is definitely an advantage to staying with families as opposed to staying in hotels.
Just a matter of disclosure, because now was brought it up, but I did receive a communication from a Spanish teacher, and that is passed on to the administration. They are looking into that, just for disclosure. And that is also an exchange program, but they have to do a lot of the research. Thank you.
Yes,
Did the
thank
kids will the kids miss school days here when they go to France? I'm just curious.
They would. So they would probably miss usually a couple of days before April vacation. So typically, you might leave on the Wednesday night.
Okay,
and
but
then-
it's centered around the vacation
Correct.
time?
Yes, yes. And we're also a little bit, France has a kind of an interesting, the whole country is divided up into 3 regions, A, B, and C. And so each region has a different time for a particular vacation. So their February vacation in Region A is different than Region B, and then different again in Region C, and they rotate. So February vacation or April vacation is not always the 3rd week in April. Anyway, they do that for a variety of reasons, not just to complicate matters, although it is France. So-
Keep the airfares lower.
But
When everyone's not
it's-
trying to go to Florida.
It's fair to say that the teacher is also giving up vacation time.
I am. We are. It
So-
is. It's
so-
a busman's
so
holiday.
thank you
There's
for
no
that.
question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So-
And then I just got to be thinking about like political unrest in a country too, and like how would we know to make the decision to pull the program, like, you know, if we were afraid that all of a sudden there was too much going on in that country,
Sure.
too much heat.
Sure. Again,
I have no
think-
idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That might be in
Well,
some
that would
of
be
the
part of the
policies.
policy, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. You know.
I do remember a few years ago, this was when I was, again, teaching in my other district, the exchange program, there was in fact some unrest going on at the time. There were some riots going on in the suburbs of Paris. This was in the early 2000s, and the State Department had put out a communication saying that, you know, Americans were encouraged to restrict their travel. So the school committee, again, I came here to the school committee asking for their consideration, and they did say at that particular time, we'll sort of take our lead from the State Department. And then ultimately the State Department lifted their advisory, which allowed us to then move forward with the trip itself. So should it come to that, I would defer to higher powers. So.
Keep in mind, I went to Bogota, Colombia in 1987.
Mhm.
It was like a little window when Kenyon College thought it was safe to go.
No, I think this is great as well. I am supportive as well. I mean, I think it's more equitable given the cost, and I like the cultural exchange piece of it more than the sightseeing piece of it, right? I think it's
Right.
more appropriate to what, you know, the mission of the schools and what we're doing, so
Yeah.
really appreciate your bringing this
So-
forward.
I know a 2026 grad who is very excited about this.
Sorry?
A 2026 grad is
Excellent.
very excited about this. She saw it on the printer, so.
Yeah, you may incent middle school students to keep with
Yes,
their
keep
French.
with their
and
French.
Well, I know.
So-
Well, the Quebec trip has become more and more
Yeah.
popular.
Oh,
right?
yes.
It's now, 3 buses. I mean, I don't know if it's that many,
Oh,
but
my gosh.
Sometimes more kids than they can fit on the bus.
then they can fit, right. So, yes, absolutely. And I will say, too, there's also a concern, would they have to host in order to travel, and vice versa? And the answer to that is no. And we also appreciate that for many students, April vacation is a tough time to go abroad because, of course, you have college visits or you have sporting commitments or you just have other family vacations. But those students could then host in October and still have that French experience.
Yeah. Right.
So that is another benefit to the, and vice versa. You know, it's like, oh, I can't host for whatever reason, but I would like to go and stay with a family. And I can tell you again, indeed, some of the friendships, some of the bonds. I mean, it's touching. I remember, in particular, there were 2 students who, again, this was at my other district. They went as juniors. They struck up such a great friendship with the family that the 2 families ended up swapping homes for 2 weeks over the summer. So this family it was Reading. This family went to Normandy and stayed in this French family's house for 2 weeks, and that French family came to Reading and they stayed in Reading for 2 weeks in August. And it's that. I mean, I think that's an exception,
Yeah.
but that's the kind of thing that can absolutely, you make friends. I mean, it's really what it's about. So.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's great. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Speaking of field trips, item 6.3 is.
We don't have to.
Well, I think we cannot yet, other than to say, because we'll have to take it up under policy, right? Because as we currently stand, we don't have policy to allow this,
Or-
correct?
well-
But,
Well, we do have some kind of,
sorry, what, Liza?
no, I'm asking Carrie, oh, sorry.
yeah.
We do have,
We have a policy.
And is it, does it, well, it fits, right? So, does the policy, do we have to vote on it for policy?
Approved by the school
It
committee.
needs to be approved by somebody. It doesn't, it's
Yeah.
ambiguous about who.
Oh, about
So-
who, whether it's the school committee or not.
I feel comfortable that we'll make a motion, and it seems that we have a consensus.
Do we want to get more information though on the vetting process and that?
Well, can we
What's the
vote
timeline?
to allow them to move ahead?
Yes, that's what I was thinking, to just continue.
So I'll make a motion
Okay.
to approve the foreign language department to move ahead with investigating the France exchange program for the 2020-2021 school year with the Forum Language Experience. Is that the organization? Promotor? Did I say it right?
I'll second.
Yes.
Okay. Eliza and Carlos, okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Everyone's in, okay, great.
And that specific information about the vetting process, we should be able to get very easily, and we'll send it along.
Okay.
Excellent, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so sorry, now moving on to 6.3, to receive notification of the late-night field trip of Hingham Middle School drama students to New York City on May 16th, 2020. And the field trip form is in your packets. Any questions on this? Stranded? No? It says receive notification. I feel like we sometimes receive notification and sometimes we vote on these. I'm never quite clear, but this is just receiving notification. 'Cause
Yeah,
you've-
the policy, I just looked at the policy. The policy says the superintendent can approve it after you've discussed it.
Okay.
And I know we were talked about before, practice if it's an international trip, that to have discussion, if you want to take action, you certainly can.
All right, okay. So we received notice, so no questions or discussion on the New York City. And then 6.4, receiving notification of the late-night field trip of Hingham High School students to Puerto Rico on October 9th through 12th. So that should be, that is an overnight, that is also in your packet, is a 4-day trip. Look like maybe it's over Columbus Day weekend, for about 16 students. Any questions or discussion on that item?
Is this a language-focused trip or
are they
a
doing there?
science-focused trip for Puerto Rico? Or
Do you know?
service?
Yes, so
Mrs.
this is
Pollard, thank you.
primarily
There she
a
is.
language and culture-focused trip, similar to the trips or the France and Spain trip that Alec mentioned a minute ago. The proposal for Puerto Rico, as opposed to Spain or another European country, was us wanting to get in some trips that are at a slightly lower price point and a slightly shorter time commitment, so that maybe more people would be able to go. But yes, it is primarily a language and culture-focused trip.
Great, thank you for that clarification. Any other questions, comments? No? Okay. We're good on that, Jessica?
Approved.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 6.5 are some appointments of paraeducators, occupational therapist, tutor, and food service technicians that are in your packets. Item 7 are any items not reasonably known 48 hours in advance of the meeting. Anyone on the committee with a 48-hour administration? No? All right. Item 8 are subcommittee and project reports. I will just start with Ness if you have anything to report.
I have East. We had a school council meeting on December 11th. We continued discussion on the parent caregiver surveys. They're going to be sending them out just after the break on January 6th. We're going to review the results on the next school council meeting, which is January 22nd. Then we also started talking about the breakdown of the MCAS scores for East, and it was noted that much of the decline had to do with absenteeism. This is an area that the school is going to focus on communicating to everyone to try to get the scores back up. And then I have METCO. Do we want to do METCO now?
Sure, yeah, so you can do all yours.
So, we attended a METCO Directors Association Annual Educators Conference. This was the 35th Annual Educators Conference, which was held on December 6th. And the theme of this year's conference was Climate Matters, the Effect of Race in the 21st Century, How We Can Impact Student Achievement. The keynote speaker was Dr. Christopher Emden. He's an associate professor in the Department of Mathematics, Science, and Technology at Teachers College, Columbia University, where he also serves as the director of the Science Education Program and the associate director of the Institute for Urban and Minority Education. He's a scholar, author, and advocate. Dr. Emden was a dynamic speaker. He was very fun to listen to his keynote. He was just full of energy. He talked a lot about trying not to force students to communicate in a prescribed way, but instead let them communicate in the manner that they are comfortable with, allow them to bring their cultural experience into the classroom, and even to embolden them to speak in ways not traditionally accepted in schools. It will allow the students to be accepted for who they are, which will give them the confidence to flourish and recognize their own brilliance. In addition to that, I went to 2 different breakout sessions. One was Overcoming White Fragility. This course was based on a book written by Robin DiAngelo, also called White Fragility. We talked about DiAngelo's definition of white fragility and identify tendencies that we have. DiAngelo coined the term white fragility to describe the disbelieving defensiveness that white people exhibit when their ideas about race and racism are challenged, and particularly when they feel like they're implicated in white supremacy. People will form predictable patterns, like insisting we were, quote unquote, taught to treat everyone the same, or that they are colorblind. We do this because to be called a racist or to have racist activities is to be called a bad person. And we become very defensive about that. So we do an injustice to racial issues, and then we shut down before really understanding the racist system that's currently in place. If we cannot talk honestly about the issues, then we can't make progress in this area. There were a couple books that were discussed in the course for good reading material. I've read them both. I thought they were both fantastic. The first one was White Fragility, Why Is It So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism? And the second one was How to Be an Anti-Racist by Abram X. Kendi. The second one that I attended was called Race Still Matters. I'm actually going to just read the description because I thought it captured it pretty well. It's recognizing that racism and cultural bias affect all of us at some level and requires that individual practitioners constantly reevaluate their own attitudes, biases, and personal experiences with people of different races and ethnic groups, gender, social class, religious and spiritual beliefs, sexual orientation, age, and mental and physical ability. Dr. Bailey's presentation explored the role that cultural humility, intersectionality, and minority stress theory can have on therapeutic relationship. He also discussed utilizing social justice framework in the therapeutic relationship and examined how mental health professionals can play an important part of promoting equity, equality, and fairness in their practice. So we did some role play on other forms of oppression in a clinical environment during that breakout session. So that was very powerful. We talked about having more people attend next year. I'm sure Michelle will talk about that.
Yes, I will talk about it right now. I had also attended. It was an excellent conference. There were, I believe, 11 of us from Hingham Public Schools there, including our Medco director, Carol's, and several staff members, school principals, assistant principal. So it was great. Newton had 50 representatives from their school district at the conference, so the gauntlet has been thrown down, people, and we will have more than 11 people there next year is my recommendation. So, I mean, it's a much bigger, I know, it is a much bigger district, obviously, but there was some discussion that it would be great to see maybe all of leadership there next year. It was a really informative, just really inspiring meeting, and I think everyone who was there got so much out of it. We were actually trying to send around a doodle poll to figure out how we could all just sit around and talk about it and sort of debrief, because it was such a great conference and everyone sort of had taken part in different workshops and learned a little bit different. So it was really, really terrific. So appreciate the district for funding us to go to it, and as well as Carol's for inviting folks and really encouraging attendance at it. It was great. Thank you, Ness, for giving everyone the update on that. Libby?
Okay, well, I'm following that.
You're
I
following
got
that,
nothing.
sorry. That's okay.
Sorry.
All right, it's okay. It's a mic drop.
Try to compete.
There you're good.
So The master plan committee has finished the visioning sessions, and we have a meeting on December 18th that the committee's going to talk about, what we heard in the visioning sessions and where we're moving forward. And then for Foster, there hasn't been much going on at the school in December, but I did want to let everybody know that on Monday, January 6th is the next PTO meeting, and Wednesday, January 15th is the next school council meeting. And so I am sure that the MSBA decision would be something people are going to be asking questions about. I can plan to go to both of those, but maybe on Wednesday night at the workshop, we talk about how are we communicating to the community about what the next steps are. I also have heard some rumors of people already talking about, and the people have been sharing with me, parents have said, oh, well, when they do the construction, they're going to redistrict all the kids to the other elementary schools, and we're going to have 40 kids in a classroom and modulars. And I was like, no, there's no decision whatsoever. Nobody's even started talking about those things. So as to the community, no one has made any decisions about what's happening. So that's something that we should address.
Right,
And
so
be
I can say
prepared for.
that community outreach needs to get a meeting on the calendar so that we can put together a FAQ, frequently asked questions. We could do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, to
update
update
those, so what we have.
Yeah, going forward. Did
Yes.
you get my email? Okay.
We could talk about it Wednesday night.
Yeah.
when we-
Yes, I have it on the list of communication plan is one of the things to discuss. Thank you, Liza, and thank you for your work on the master visioning plan. I know several folks here attended many sessions, multiple sessions.
Yes.
I attended, unfortunately, just a brief portion of one, but very informative and great work being done. Well,
Yeah. Thank you.
great
for
listening
everyone
being
who
done so
came.
far. Now the work will be.
Yeah, now we gotta analyze
Now
it
you gotta
and
figure out how
make
to
some decisions.
Right, exactly. All right, Ed.
A week ago today, the Long Range Planning, Ness, Carlos, and myself attended a program that John put together with various stakeholders. Carlos will give a report on this in a moment or two. I found it very, very informative. My personal takeaway was start thinking about some repurposing of a couple of very valuable but underutilized buildings. And then this morning, I was a school committee rep at Michelle's request at the Hingham High School Rowing Association biannual meeting. John was there, and Dr. Ross were there. My takeaway was twofold. I found, or I feel that the fees that are being charged our parents are very in line with what other towns are charging for this. I have, as you know, grandkids in a couple of other school districts, and one of my granddaughters did fall rowing, and I will tell you that the fees that are being charged to the Hingham parents are very, very close, if not identical, to the fees that are being charged to other school parents or grandparents, as the case may be. The other takeaway was the program is growing. This past fall, there were 105 kids that participated. And in the winter indoors, there are 67 kids participating, which was, to me, very encouraging.
Great, thank you. Carrie?
So I will reach out to the policy subcommittee to schedule a meeting probably after the holidays. I think it was last Friday, I attended the Council of School Attorneys workshop with Dr. Austin. It was very interesting. It was nice to go. And we heard about two Department of Labor Relations decisions. There was the First Circuit case about the Individuals with Disabilities Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. That was interesting. And then we got an update from DESE on the Student Opportunity Act. In addition to the funding that comes with that, there's also an accountability piece. And each district is going to be required to submit a 3-year plan illustrating how they're going to close any achievement gaps with the high needs, ELL, and student with disabilities. And they said one thing that's going to be important for the school committee with this is one thing that's required under the law is to reach out to the parent groups of those populations. And so that's kind of like part of our key role is to reach out to them as we, so it'll be basically the superintendent will submit the plan with consultation with us. So it was good.
That was great. Thank you very much. Carlos?
As Ed alluded to, we long-range planning met on Monday the 9th at 3 p.m. at Building 179 and then Building 12. We had several stakeholders, they included the town administrator and assistant town administrator. Had members of the rec department, athletic department, Kids in Action was present, and us from Long Range Planning, along with John and Katie and Doug Foley. It was a very productive meeting. We walked through both buildings. We heard some great ideas, ideas that eventually you'll hear about it. But there's some great ideas. Perhaps Kids in Action could go there, and some other items as people discussing. The pool at the South Shore Country Club not happening anymore. Perhaps that's something that was brought up. That the location probably would be a great location for a pool. So those are in discussion right now. It's just John wanted to hear from the stakeholders, and we did indeed heard from everyone. We're very pleased. John, Nass, Dr. Schreier, anything else you'd like to add to that?
Carlos, I would like to add that it's great that you're getting all these people to talk to one another, and that's one of the things that's coming out from the master plan on the town. So it's good that you're working simultaneous, but maybe stay simultaneous as opposed to getting too far ahead, because one of the things the master plan I can already tell is going to start looking at is how can there be more synergy among departments in town, so that, and especially with facilities, so that we can maximize the value of the facilities at senior center, schools, rec center, country, all of those aspects. So
I'm actually glad that you brought that up,
Yeah.
because Tom Mayo mentioned that his team would definitely make sure that this facility would be brought up to be discussed as part of the master plan.
it's already something on the radar
Yes.
of people. So
Yes.
and I realize, we own it. But it is something that it would behoove everyone if we all work together.
For the benefit of all. Yeah.
So it's good. All good.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. I just have a couple things. Special Ed Subcommittee did not meet this month, actually. There was much going on with this holiday month. But we are scheduled for January 15th at 10:30. I had attended the CPAC meeting. Dr. Vinnis was there as well last Wednesday. It was a sort of a planning session that the CPAC board and the audience members were discussing their plans for education and other events for the remainder of the school year. Then tomorrow's workshop, just another plug for that. So we are meeting in Central North at 6 o'clock Wednesday night, not televised, open to the public, and it'll be a relatively short meeting. I'm thinking maybe an hour, just to sort of talk about communication plan, community outreach, working on frequently asked questions, and then just go through just a quick update from administration on the orientation that they attended after the vote from the MSBA. And on that note of the MSBA, the town of Hingham is very grateful to the MSBA for inviting us into this eligibility period, as well as our legislators who helped us and were very supportive of this, and all the folks on the town side who've been supportive of this. And I think Wednesday's workshop is sort of a testament to that. It'll be, the building committee will be there, the school committee, AdCom, and I think a representative from the Board of Selectmen as well as the town administrator. So it would be a great meeting. And also thank you to the townspeople of Hingham for their support for this project, and we appreciate their patience while we work through the details of what will come next. All right, that's all I have. So with that, I would take a motion to adjourn. Nope, I'm sorry, John, yes.
We didn't give an update on the meeting today, so we
Oh,
started
I'm
looking at 2021 capital.
Thank you, John. Yeah, so we, long-range plan did meet tonight, and we continue our process of going through the capital budget. And at this stage right now, we are looking into a $2.2 million. We had started on 2.8. We already, have been able to eliminate sort of several line items.
Okay.
And we'll be meeting again, did we pick the date? January 6th. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you,
All right,
John.
so with that, I will take.
I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session, for the purpose of approval of minutes of the executive session the school committee held on December 2nd, 2019, and discussing matters related to the current HEA Unit A collective bargaining contract, the public discussion of which may be detrimental to the committee's bargaining position, and to discuss matters related to the collective bargaining negotiations with the HEA Unit A for the 2020-2023 contract, the public discussion of which may be detrimental to the committee's bargaining position.
Second? Oh, Libby, thank you. Any discussion or all in favor? Roll call?
Aye.
Libby, roll call, sorry.
Oh, sorry, aye.
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 Aye. All right, we are adjourned to executive session.